Hello everybody and welcome into my latest live stream. Today it's Saturday. Yes, another rare Saturday broadcast for me. It's 1 o'clock Pacific time, 2 o'clock in Arizona. My name is Kerry Holzman. Not Scary Holzman, but you're not wrong. Today I'm going to do another router review. So you're going to see a lot more reviews coming up here, not only because it's the holiday time, people are thinking of great gifts, but also maybe a gift for yourself. And of course, these videos are far less expensive and take less time to produce than computer builds. I'm not abandoning computer builds, not at all. I'm just not doing as many of them because all work and no play makes Kerry a very dull boy. There's a reference for those of us over 40. All right, now, the topic for today is this ASUS router. Now, this is not the latest router from ASUS. It's been out for some time now. But what makes it so cool is if you're like me and you need a lot of networking ports, don't mind me as I walk up to the camera here. Check this out. 8 gigabit networking ports on the back. So you're going to plug your cable modem in there. You've got the USB port to share a printer or a USB drive, so everybody on your network can use what's plugged in here. It's great for file sharing. It's great for streaming media to your smart TV. Then, of course, on the other side, we've got our reset switch there in, where is it? Right there in red. Next to that is the WPS, the Wireless Protected Service. That's just to push a button on each device to automatically configure it, which should be disabled. Our power jack right over there, and our on-off switch. On the front of the router, do we have anything on the front? Yes. If we open up this little, well, let's see. First of all, we've got a button on the front that turns off the LEDs and a button that turns off the Wi-Fi. If you accidentally press that, you wonder where your Wi-Fi went. That often happens when people are cleaning or reorganizing things. When they pick up the router, if I can hold it steady, sometimes they grab it and they hit these buttons by mistake. So be aware that those buttons are there. Coming over to the other side, there's a little door here. I think there's a little door there. Yes, and there's another USB port right there in the front. That one's blue, so I suppose that's USB 3. And you know, we're not looking at a monster of a router here. I used to think these were big. I used to use these ASUS routers that had the 8 ports back when they were first introduced. Now this is going to be Wi-Fi 6, not Wi-Fi 6E. And the reason I'm showing it to you today, I've been showing you 3 manufacturers of routers that I recommend and use in my business. TP-Link on the budget side, Netgear, and then ASUS, which I find very equivalent in performance and pricing. The ASUS routers, I would say, aren't as popular as the Netgear routers. However, I've been using Netgear and ASUS routers exclusively for Studio A and Studio B for about 10 years now. I've not had really good reliability with the TP-Links over time. If a customer has a problem with the network and they have a TP-Link router, it's often something wonky going on in the routers that I've encountered more so than with other brands. Not that it affects everybody who owns TP-Links. It's just when I look at the number of people who have network-related problems, and then how many of those people are running which brand of router, I've seen a couple of TP-Links lately and not any Netgear or ASUS routers in a long time. So that could be coincidence. I don't know what's going on, but even the TP-Link Deco mesh system I'm using, it's been showing 100% CPU usage and really bogging everything down. I don't know if something on the network has changed, but I'm replacing that with a Wi-Fi 6 version where we can have a tri-band and do the backhaul on one of the bands. So I think that'll improve things. I'll follow up and let you know. Today we're talking about this router right here, and there's a reason for that. Not only is it one of the only routers I know that has the 8 ports on it, and yes, of course, you can add a network switch to any router that's got an available port on the back, but it's just a cable nightmare and it takes up another plug and it's just makes for a mess. It's also one more thing that you need to reboot anytime you have to restart the router. When switches flake out, they're very difficult to diagnose. I had a problem where a computer wasn't going to certain websites We couldn't figure it out until we realized there was a little switch on the floor that we forgot about. And this all happened after a power brownout. After we unplugged the switch, because I diagnosed this for 3 days. After I unplugged the switch, left it off for about a minute, plugged it back in, it's been fine ever since. So these kind of diagnostics and troubleshooting get more complicated. The more hardware we add, the more potential points of failure we have. So if I could just get 8 right out of the gate, then I ain't got nothing to hate. All right, so I'm going to come around here. We're going to go through this router, and I want to show you one more time why this router today. You know, this is not the latest and greatest. This is a $270 router. I think it's $270. Let me go to Amazon and take a look, because I can't remember anymore. I got too many things going on. So let me jump over to Amazon. I have a link for this router in the video notes below the video, and I'm going to show you how we find this. Let me go to this screen sharing option here. Window capture, properties, and we're going to go to my Amazon tab and turn that on. Okay, here we go. So now we're at Amazon's webpage as of today, December 17th, 2022. And I'm going to type in ASUS AX6000. Is it AX6000? Yeah, that's it right there. $268. All right, my memory isn't so bad. Click on that. Here's the deal. There are bargains to be had on Amazon, but you have to search them out. They're not advertised. So this router, they have available. I think there's still one left. You see this gray box? It says save with used. Scroll down a little further, 2 boxes down, and you'll see new and used from 176. Right there, 176. Somebody returned this to Amazon. It's coming from Amazon Warehouse. I only purchase items that come from Amazon Warehouse, so I have peace of mind if I have to return it for any reason. This is called used and acceptable condition. But here's the thing. Let me go back to camera 1, and I want you to take another look at this used router. And this is how it was shipped to me, in a plain cardboard box with packing like this, no instructions. I got this Ethernet cable, I got that router. The antennas, you have to screw them on. Some routers, the antennas are fixed in place. Otherwise, they typically don't connect them so they don't break in shipping. So you just screw the antennas on, and then the power adapter. That's what I got, and it saved me $100. You'll see it says Amazon used right there on the sticker. And Amazon doesn't really promote this stuff. So for $100 off, it's $170. We've got the 8 ports. It is Wi-Fi 6. It is not Wi-Fi 6E. Adding Wi-Fi 6E adds about $150 to the cost of a router on average. So let me bring this up to the camera. And apart from my fingerprints, which I put on there, you show me if this is an acceptable condition. It's like brand new. It'll say that could have a scratch on it that's not visible from 18 inches away. I can't find anything at all wrong with this router. Is it that maybe? I didn't even notice that till it was on camera. And how much would a Windex and a paper towel clean that off if it was bothering me? I can't see anything wrong with this router. Rubber feet are all there. Antennas are like brand new. Nothing is scratched as it's described. It looks exactly like new. Of course, I didn't get the original box. I didn't get any documentation. But you know what? I'll go online and get the documentation from ASUS if I want it. Download the PDF file. But it's a router. What do I need documentation for? It's pretty simple. We're going to set this up. I've already run through it, so I've erased it, started over again by hitting the reset button in the back, sets it back to factory settings. So we're going to go through this as though it were absolutely brand new, and we'll hook it up to this little mini PC that we reviewed yesterday. So let me get that fired up, and let's get the router turned on. So we'll start by putting the power cable into the back of the router here, just like so. Hit the power button. We've got a lot of lights across the top here. This is great, so I can see what's going on across my internet connection, Wi-Fi 2.4, Wi-Fi 5, USB 1, USB 2, and WPS when it's active. It's sort of like Bluetooth pairing. It stays active for like a minute or two, and then it shuts off. That lets you know it's ready. Now, when this boots up, we're going to get a red light because it's not configured. It has no access at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and plug my internet cable, if I can find it. It's laying around here somewhere. Where's my internet cable? Here it is. That goes into the blue port. And then I'm going to hardwire this little PC into here because we don't have Wi-Fi set up yet. It can literally go into any of those 8 ports. Doesn't matter. They're all equal to each other. All right. And then I don't think this originally came with a white cable. It might have, but I'm not using that. Every router should come with an Ethernet cable. And of course, if you don't want to hardwire it to set it up, you can use your phone and download the ASUS app from the Google Store or the iOS Apple Store and just run through it through the mobile app, which is mostly what manufacturers are encouraging folks to do because it's just easier, at least for regular non-technical people. If you're a technical person like me, then you're going to prefer to set it up the way you've set up routers your whole life. Assuming you're not more than 20 years old and routers have been around for 20 years. These kind, Wi-Fi. Oh, I'm so excited to set this up. Just about anything that you want to buy on Amazon, take a look for that new and used. Sometimes that may not be available if there are no other options. However, it's worth looking. Now, if something has batteries, or if something has a limited lifespan, like a hard drive or a solid state drive or a flash drive, I would avoid purchasing those used because you don't know how much wear and tear they have on them. As long as you buy from Amazon Warehouse, you can always send them back trouble-free within 30 days. Right now, Amazon returns are extended until the end of January, with the thought being that you're buying something as a gift and the person who's receiving it may want a couple of weeks to decide if they like it or not, and if not, they can send it back to Amazon. So Amazon is very generous and very easy on those returns. There's not much for you to look at there, is it? Let's turn it around this way. You can see, still have that red light. That's because there is no internet access with this yet. We have not set it up. So set it up is very simple. The manufacturers typically have a little website you can type in that's local to your network that will take you to the router. There's about 3 or 4 different ways, including the app, that we can get to it. I can look at what my gateway address is with the ipconfig command and go there that way, or I could simply browse my network, and I should see it on the network, I think. So we're going to go over to this machine, which I think I have plugged in. Let me see what happens here. Is that machine on? I don't see it. I don't know if I plugged it in or not. Yeah, it's plugged in. All right, well, that should work. Let me go back over here, and just so I don't confuse you guys too much, I'll just put myself in a corner here as I try and figure out why I don't have any video on. Oh, I'm on the portable camera. I'm not on the computer. There, that helps when I have the right options selected. Okay, so let me just get this a bit smaller, like so. And let me go full screen over here for me. All right, so if I want to configure this universally with any router, you should be able to simply type in the gateway address in the browser. Sometimes you can start the browser and it will force you into the router setup page, the first time router setup page. Or I can click on, let's see, if we close this, if I go to the yellow folder, click on the network, I might see the router in here. And I do. I see the router. I see 2 of them for some reason. One may be a USB port, so I'm going to double click the first one. And that's not taking me anywhere. Let me double click the second one. Ah, see, that brought me right to the router setup page. So here we are with the ASUS. It's the RT-AX88U router. We're going to create a new network. Now, almost all the modern ASUS routers set up exactly the same way. So this right here will be our SSD. This is my wireless name. And wireless security, this is my password. Now, we can separate the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. To do that, that means you have to manually choose which network you want to be on, depending on what your device supports and which signal is the best, or the router does it for you automatically. The only reason to separate these is if you're having trouble connecting with an older Wi-Fi device. So to keep things simple, I don't want to name another SSID and another password. I'm going to leave that as default and hit apply. Now we have to set up a router name and password. Now I'm going to set this up with basic. This is my password. This is my password. You should not use the name admin, and you should choose a much stronger password. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. Is it not going to let me? Oh, my passwords don't match. Okay, I see. It says right there, passwords didn't match. This is my password. And you shouldn't have the same login password as your SSID password. That's not secure. But again, because I'm broadcasting out to the world, I don't need everybody looking at what password habits I have here. So that just makes me more vulnerable. Okay, now we've logged in, and now this is the traditional ASUS login firmware page that you're going to find on most modern ASUS routers. Now, some of the gaming routers add some graphics, but it's more or less the same interface. We have a number of items scrolling down the left. The advanced settings are all here, and then for each item that you select in here, like USB application, you may have a number of tabs across the top. Now this one does not have tabs across the top for this option, but open NAT. No, I don't see tabs there either. Gaming, don't have tabs there. Wireless, look at all the tabs. We have WPS, WDS, MAC filtering, radius settings, something called professional, and of course a roaming blacklist if you want to ban certain items from ever connecting to the network. All right, there's parental controls and things like that, which I'm not going to get into all those details. But as you can see, this router that's quote unquote used from Amazon warehouse functions flawlessly so far as I can tell. Under USB applications, these are what you can use those USB ports for, something called AI disk, which is to share files in the USB disk through the internet. Well, I don't want to create my own cloud. I just want to share files locally on my local area network. Server Center, which is the setup, universal plug and play, iTunes, FTP. Again, this is all for network access, internet access. You can set up a network printer server, even if you don't have a networkable printer. Every USB printer can be a network printer by using the USB port on a router. There's 3G, 4G. That means you can take a hotspot from a cellular provider and use that as a backup internet connection if your internet goes down. There's Time Machine, which enables Time Machine functionality for Apple computers. I don't think that works on Windows computers because Time Machine's an Apple thing. And let me go back. Where was I? The Download Master. You can use this as a download manager and take the downloads away from your computer resources and let your router take care of it all. So, and then of course that would save to, I think it would save to a USB drive. I've never used it. Clearly you have to install this. It's not something you simply activate. And then of course AI Cloud 2.0 is to create a cloud disk, cloud synchronization, or just smart access. I don't use any of these, and once again, you can get the app for this on the Google Play and Apple App Store. Adaptive QoS, once again, I don't use that, but that's for prioritizing a number of people or a number of computers are on the network at the same time. Somebody's gaming, somebody's streaming Netflix, somebody's in a Zoom meeting. You can prioritize whose data gets priority. Otherwise, the router just handles it all equally. Some ASUS routers have what's called a gaming port. This one does not. But if you use the gaming port, it automatically says anything plugged into this port gets data priority. That's usually what you're getting on a gaming router. If you see that advertised, a router advertised as a gaming router, you'll see it ties in with Alexa. You can do things like tell the router to turn on the guest network or update the firmware. I don't know why you would want to do this. There's more information about that. It takes you to ASUS's website here, which should load in just a second. I don't know what the delay is, for more explanation, and it doesn't seem to like that. But it doesn't matter, I'm not going to use it. So again, lots and lots of features. I typically go under administration. I go to the firmware upgrade tab. I want to turn auto firmware updates on and have it do it very early in the morning when I'm not using it, where I'm likely not using it. And I'll check right now just to make sure we have the latest firmware. Having the latest firmware on your router is absolutely critical if you like to be secure and you like to, enter into the battlefield with the best armor you can get. Let's see what it says. This router's current firmware is the latest version. Now, that's how it came to me from Amazon. I did not update this, so that's pretty cool. I don't know if it's coincidence or if somebody at Amazon did update it in testing, or even if they tested it at all. I have no idea. But I do know I saved $100 on this router, and that is a smoking deal. Okay, now, where did I go? Let me go back to my browser here. Hello, everybody joining us in the chat. Sorry, I got so excited to start I didn't do my usual hellos, but hello to Kevin Russell and George Armstrong and Nick Poverman and Ron Barnish, as well as Patrick Rousseau, Luke Greenia, and Doman 2000, Captain Linsky, and Sarge Tech, as well as Mark Baggett. Aaron Mitchell joins us, as well as Peter Parker, aka Superman the Hero, who wants to know what cell phone I have. I always use the Samsung Galaxy, whatever the latest version is. I do believe the S23 will be out. Typically in February is when Samsung releases their new phones. I'm a huge fan of the Galaxy series, so whatever the latest Galaxy phone is typically the one you can expect me to have. Why do you ask? Sometimes people ask these questions in an attempt to hack me. It's like they know, if they know what phone I'm using or who my service provider is, that's getting them a little closer to hacking me. I'm not suggesting that Spider-Man the Hero is trying to hack me, but by asking such questions, if the content creator does answer them, you might be jeopardizing the security of that content creator. I got the new membership badges going. You'll see like Matthew Burden has a big number 6 in front of his badge. You can't even see my logo, but it shows he's been a member for 6 months or more. YouTube allows me to change the badges for new members, 1 month, 2 month, 6 month, and 12 month, and then it goes 1 year, 2 year. Memberships have only been available for 7 months. So if you're wondering what that little number is next to the badge, that's just showing, Mark Gaines as well, a member for 6 months. And David Martinez and Mark Baggett as well. I do try to pay attention to that so that I can give those members a priority with the questions they ask, but sometimes they get by me regardless. So it is important, if I'm not answering your question, I'm likely not seeing it. When you see me go to the screen for the computer or the router, it's taking the whole screen and it's covering the chat. So the chat's scrolling and I'm not even seeing it. And then when I look back at the chat later on and I start to look through it, I'm looking through it quickly. I'm sort of like skimming it. So even then I can still miss things. All right, and Thomas Mac T, you'll see he's got a number 2 on his badge. Welcome in, Thomas. Yeah, see, we're seeing Ron Barnish with a 2, Vern Mahoney with us. Is that a 5? No, it's 6. There is no 5. And Patrick Manny has a 6 there. Tim Davern has a 6. Wow, those members have been with me almost since the beginning of the memberships. Dustin Fuller. And, Luke Greenia is also a 6. Matthew Burden is a 6. David Martinez is a 2. Anyway, trying to find different ways to showcase that. Thomas Backenstow just became a well, sorry, he's renewed his support. He is now a 6. So that means 6 months or longer. 6 to 11 months is what that means. So right now, the most you could be is 7, and YouTube doesn't offer me an option to do every month. Okay, so let's say, for example, we want to use this to share files and folders with everybody here on my network here in Studio B. I grab one of these standard everyday. Oh, you can barely see me. Hold on, I'm still in the corner. Let me go bigger here. I have one of these little USB Seagate Elements or Western Digital Passport mechanical laptop drives. This one's 2 terabytes. They're like 50 or 60 bucks. I wouldn't buy one of these used. They're so cheap, just buy it new. It's just a standard USB. This is USB 3, and we can plug this in. I can plug it into the back, or I can use this USB 3 port right up here. I can open that little door, and I can plug this in as you would any USB device. We'll likely see one of the lights up here. Yep, that USB port just lit up. That's our power light, 2.4 and 5, as well as our internet status. If that light is red, I know my internet isn't being fed into the modem, or sorry, into the router. So I have a problem at the modem or the ISP. So when things aren't working, just noticing that light right there, the 4th light from the right, if that's red, I know it's not my computer and it's not my network. I can still turn the router off and turn the modem off as a first diagnostic step. And what's nice about this router is it boots relatively quickly, as most of the modern routers have more complicated and resource-intensive operating systems. They can take 3 full minutes before they fire up. This one fires up pretty darn quickly, in my opinion, faster than I expected it to. I guess I've gotten used to those big Netgear Nighthawks and those big, like that TP-Link, that giant one. Those do take a while to boot their operating system up because they're high-end routers. Cordius Technology shows 2 months. Right on. Thanks for continuing your membership, Cordius. And Thomas says, I've been a member since the beginning, but lost you when you went up to Michigan. Well, that's weird. So that's all on YouTube. I don't know how YouTube would have not renewed it, or if you skipped a month. I'm not quite sure how YouTube handles that, but I appreciate your support. And however I can get it. All right, so now I've plugged that USB cable in. That's all I've done. Now, just for grins and giggles, I'm curious if I can access that as is. I'm very curious. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. So I'm going to try and see what happens. We'll go back over to the desktop here. And again, I have to go full screen so I can see things. Coming in 2023, I'm going to make some changes over here to Studio B that might simplify this for me. And I'm going to just close. Well, no, I'm going to minimize. I'm going to minimize that. I'm not doing anything. Go back to my network here. Let's refresh it. Or just hit this here, hit the down button here. Aha! Seagate. Now you can see it's asking for credentials. Now ASUS does this. Turns on the need to have login credentials by default. Netgear and TP-Link do not do that. For the most part, you plug it in, you're good to go, at least as far as local area network reading and writing. ASUS turns the security on by default. So we're going to have to turn that security off, because if you're on my network in my house, I'm letting you have access to my drive because, Now, if you're on my guest network, then you will not have access to anything but the internet. That's just the way guest networks are supposed to be. Some routers have an option that says network isolation for a guest network, and that should be on by default. And that's what that means. Is network isolation means the person joining that particular network is isolated away from everything else. So if I let a guest onto my guest network, which I have not enabled, they will not have access to printers or drives that I'm sharing or other folders or files shared off of other computers. Anybody that's on my network, on my regular network, could see my shares, and that's how I want it to be. So if we go over here to, let's see, USB application, I don't want any of that. Share files in through the USB. Do I have a USB option down here? It's somewhere in here. I'll find it. I've been using so many routers lately, I haven't become familiar with the layout of each differential version of each network, not network, but each router operating system. They vary from ASUS, they vary from Netgear, and they vary from TP-Link depending on the age and model. But the ASUS ones all pretty much have the same format. They just have more or less options here on the left. Generally speaking, there's always exceptions. So let me look at, I don't know, AI disk just to see. Invite you to share files through the internet. See, I don't want that. I just want to share files on my local network. Is it under administration for USB? No, it's in here and it's probably super easy to find. Network tools, wake on LAN, no. Attach, is it attach? Oh, that's for creating a mesh and optimizing the mesh. Very cool. The AiProtection is an option. I don't use this, and parental controls I don't use. I also don't use the adaptive QoS because it's just me. You can enable the traffic analyzer if you want to. I couldn't be bothered, but it can help if you're diagnosing a problem. These are gaming prioritization and what they call boosters, and the what the fast, the gamers private network, GPN is what they call that. That comes with the router. Once again, not something I use. OpenNet, don't care about that. USB application. There should be a way here to just do, see, they literally mean applications, whereas I want to use it strictly as just a network share. AI Cloud. Oh, well, this is Samba. That's pretty much what we want. That's what I want. Do I want to enable an iTunes server? I do not. Do I want to enable a UPnP media server? For me, I'd say no, I don't want to. I hit apply, the router applies those settings. I'm still not, oh, here we go. Enable share is turned on by default. This is the link I've been looking for this whole time. Allow guest login is turned on. That's all I really needed to do. You need to make sure it's on the workgroup name that your computers are on, which by default is workgroup. And we'll limit the number of concurrent users to 5, just so it doesn't bog down too much. And it does show that's the drive we have plugged in. Hit apply. And now, as soon as it comes back from applying, there we go. If I go back to the network, I should see the router share right there, Seagate portable drive, double click, and look, there's all my files and folders on there. Anything I copy to here, I copy no differently than I would to my C drive or any other attached USB drive. If I want to, I can map this drive. Mapping it means instead of searching for it every time, I could take this name like RT-AX88U. That's kind of a long name to have to type in for the network share. I could change that and call it server. That's here in the router. It's just giving the router a name, which should be right in the basic settings here for the LAN. Yeah. So say, for example, I can call this server. Just like that, hit apply. Now, sometimes when you do this, you may have to restart your computer to log into the network, which happens during the Windows startup process, whether you have a local password or not. Even if it's just booting right to the desktop, you may want to restart your computer if you're having trouble seeing the router. So with that being done, let me close out and let's look for it again, because remember now the router's name is changed. So I see server here now. If I hit the down button, there's Seagate Portable, there it is. Now, if I want to make this a permanent drive letter, I can do that. If I click on this PC, I always add the this PC icon to the desktop. You can easily do that by right-clicking and going to Display Settings. Go to Personalize. We go to Personalize, go over here to Themes. Where's my themes? Right here. This is Themes. And under Themes, look for Desktop Icon Settings. And then if I want this PC, I can add it. If I want to add the user folder or the network icon, I can change the recycle bin picture, what it looks like, full or empty. That's all done right in here. I can even add a shortcut to the control panel. Now, it's better to have the My Computer icon on the desktop than simply dragging it as a shortcut, because then I can right-click on the My Computer icon or this computer, and I can see the system specs, whereas a shortcut, if I did it, will only give you the details of that particular shortcut. So anyway, I would click on this PC, or I would bring up the yellow folder, either way. Up here at the top, I would go to, let's see where Windows 11 has moved it, right there under the three dots, Map and Network Drive. I'm going to give it the furthest drive letter away, so I don't want drive letters to conflict as I plug USB devices into computers. They're going to get the next available drive letter, so drive D or drive E or drive F or drive G. So since this is a mapped network drive, I want to put it all the way at the end of the alphabet, X, Y, Z, whatever. And I want to do it the same to every computer that I do this to, so there's consistency and it doesn't confuse people using those computers. I'm going to hit Browse. I'm going to look for the router, which I named Server. I'm going to look for the Seagate Portable Drive and click OK and click, make sure Reconnected Login or Sign In is checked, and hit Finish, and it opens it to show us that it's working. So now, when I look at my PC or this PC, I have two drive letters. You see I have drive C and I have drive Z. I open it up and I can easily copy files. I can drop and drag like that, and it just copies it over. It's super easy. And now everybody on the network can share these files. Now let me go back to the chat and see what questions you guys have. I just wanted to demonstrate how super easy that is. Anybody can do that. There's 2 terabytes of essentially network attached storage without buying a network attached storage device. It's nowhere near as fast as a network attached device like Synology makes. And you don't have the redundancy of multiple drives, such as an RAID array, as you would ordinarily be using in a NAS device. But on the other hand, this cost me $60. The router was $170. I've got 8 gigabit ports, so I'm not having to buy an added switch. I have one less point of failure. And, you know, these drives have been really reliable for me. I can't remember the last time I got a bad one. It's important you don't knock it around while it's on. I just set it next to the router. I configure it just like you've seen, and it's configured indefinitely now. When I shut off the router, the USB power is lost. If it sits for 10 or 20 minutes, the power goes out on the hard drive or the attached storage was to save power and wear and tear. So if I'm waking it up by clicking on the network drive, like I go to my computer, I go to my Z drive, there might be a slight delay of up to 20, 30 seconds, usually not much more than 20 seconds, as it spins back up. And then it stays active like that until a certain timeout period. As far as I know, you can't adjust the timeout period. It's all set within the router, but it's very welcome so the drive doesn't just sit there and spin 24/7. And you know, you're putting wear and tear and using electricity, not much, but still using electricity that you're not using the drive. Let the drive go to sleep. I think it's good. I don't mind the slight delay when I wake it up, and if I continue using it, its response time is instantaneous. The bits per second speed that the data is moving depends on if I'm moving it from a wired computer, something wired to the router, or a wireless computer. And if it's a wired or wireless, that also depends on what speed I'm connecting at. And look, I don't care how long it takes, quite frankly, because once I set something to copy, I continue to use the computer. I don't just sit there and wait till it's done copying. So if I have shows or videos that I want to put on or music, I can put it on there, and then I can stream that through any media device, a smart TV, and essentially be my own host. And it's done just that easily. You're not going to get that on a cheap router, all right? So you find one of these. Well, I take it back. This cheap TP-Link does have a USB port on it. This is the flaky one that I'm going to send to Doug Betts. He wants to play with it. And I'm not sure what speed that USB is, but I'm actually going to eat my hat on that. I didn't think this had a USB port on it, because that's a sub $100 router right there. Okay. How many of you in the chat room are using a Wi-Fi extender? And how many of you are using a router that's older than 5 years old? If you're using a Wi-Fi extender, why? And if you're running a router that's 5 years old, what make and model is it, out of curiosity? It's nice to know which brands tend to be the most reliable, even though it's really not a smart move for most people to run a router older than 5 years old for security reasons. A lot of people have the attitude, if it works, just leave it be. And that's fine. Look, it's your security, it's your internet, and it's your money, and how you choose to spend it is not for me to decide. But when there's deals to be had like this, I want you guys to know. That's all I can do, is just make the introduction, and what you guys decide to do with the information is entirely up to you. There's no right or wrong answer as far as I am concerned, because I'm not the one responsible if something goes wrong, or if you're constantly having to reboot it all the time. It doesn't involve me. It doesn't affect my business. If you were a customer of mine and you had an old router like that, I would probably require you to replace it, or I would provide the replacement at no cost after a certain period of time, just to reduce the number of support calls I'm getting. James Prezi says, hey, great video. Hope you're having a great Christmas. I hope the dogs are doing well also. Yeah, thanks, James. I just saw the dogs Wednesday. They're the same. Just fat and happy. Thomas Backenstow's using his Comcast router. Well, I'm telling you, man, those routers that come from the cable providers, what you can do is you can log into your Comcast router. The login should be on a sticker on the bottom of it. So you go to the gateway, right? You would go to ipconfig, look at what your gateway address is, open your browser and type that gateway address in. Log into the router, because it should come up with a login prompt, using the name and password that is on the sticker on the bottom of the router. Now, I will normally take a picture of that sticker on the bottom of the router with my phone, because very rarely do they set the passwords to anything simple. You have to keep looking back at it. You keep turning the router upside down. It's a pain in the rear. Just take a picture of that sticker with your phone, nice and sharp and in focus, and just look at your phone to enter the login ID and password. Once you're in there, you can disable the Wi-Fi radio. There's a button it either says enable with a checkbox, or it'll say disable, or there may be a little switch like on this router where the little slider moves to on and off. You can turn that wireless radio off and plug any router you want into your Comcast router. So let the Comcast still do its thing as far as getting you onto the internet, and then use the router of your choosing. You can use a mesh router, you can use a router like this. Simply plug it anywhere in the back of the Comcast that you have now, and then into the WAN port of your new router, and go through the setup, and you've just improved your Wi-Fi performance and range. It's very, very simple. Matthew's got an Eero mesh network. Hey, those are great. I've set a couple of those up, and they're running to this day, to the best of my knowledge. David Martinez says he has an AT&T router and modem. So once again, the same applies with any of these ISPs router modems where you log into them. You can disable the Wi-Fi. Now, if you don't disable the Wi-Fi, you can still attach a Wi-Fi router, but you're just adding network congestion, and it's going to affect your performance. And as long as you select the same Wi-Fi name and password, none of your devices will know the difference. It'll be a seamless transition from the old device to the new one. So any security cameras, garage door, your cell phones or tablets, they all just connect to a certain SSID and password. So as long as you name the SSID exactly what it is now, upper and lower case and spaces, that all matters. Set the password exactly as it is now. Then if you disable the Wi-Fi on the router you have now, enable it on the new one with those same settings, all your Wi-Fi devices just reconnect. If they're not reconnecting, you didn't name it exactly the same. You either put an extra space, or you misspelled something or reversed some letters, or you don't have the case correct. Upper and lower case do matter. George Ferrugia says he's using an RT-AX88U. Yeah, that's a good router too. That whole 80 series of routers from ASUS. That should be Wi-Fi 6. Let's see, Sarge Tech says Charter Spectrum provides a cable modem for free, but if you get a wireless router from them, it's $7 a month rent fee. I use my own router. When you do use your own router, if you call your ISP for support and they've determined you're not using their router, they use that as an excuse to not help you, just so you know. But you could always come here and ask for help. We're happy to help you. It does get a little frustrating for me when people use their imagination and theorize problems. But if you're having an actual real problem, then that's actually something we can help with. Just so you know, you do not have to necessarily rely on your ISP for that. Now, if you're somebody who's constantly calling your ISP, you don't want to give that up, don't change out the router. Yeah, because I don't want you mad at me. Chances are, if you do change it out, though, you'll have to call the ISP less often. But, depends on why you're calling. All right. What is it? The RT-AX88U. I'm curious which model that is. Let's take a quick look at that. Let's go back to my screen capture. RT-AX82U. Oh, that's the good. Yeah, okay. I really like this router. It's just a sexy looking router. Now this is interesting because they have brand new, it's $195, but they have a refurbished, or what they call renewed, router at $139. But if we look at the regular retail router at $195, look over on the right side, look for that gray box, go 2 boxes down, see if there's anything new or used. No, it just says save with used, very good, $139. So that's, what that's going to do? That's going to take us to the other page, I betcha. So if we go to the other page, looking at the refurbished version, it's going to have a more limited warranty, usually about 90 days, I think. Yeah, 90-day Amazon renewed guarantee. That's for all Amazon renewed products at $60, right? $60 savings, or wait a minute. $195. So yeah, it's a $55, $54 savings getting it renewed. And let me go back here and see if there's any returned ones that are renewed that were returned. That's like a double whammy. I look for that gray box, doesn't have it. Underneath add to list, we see renewed from $139. This person wants $247 refurbished. That's clearly not coming from Amazon. Interesting. And this one's not coming from Amazon either. However, it is backed by Amazon's guarantee. That's a really cool router. They're like looks-wise, aesthetically, it's very attractive. I'm not quite sure what the range difference might be between this and the larger ASUS I've got in front of me, because the antennas are more spread out. I don't know if it's faster. We'd have to look. Essentially, that's 5400. And this one that I'm using is a 6000. So this one would be a little bit faster, assuming you had the ability to connect to it. And it sells $268 versus $195. So that makes sense. You're paying more, you're getting more. But hey, I love this router. That's the router our good friend Uncle Mitch is using. And oh boy, what else do we have down here? I started looking for some deals. This one blew my mind, and I'm going to make a video on this router right here, because I keep finding more and more of these deals, and every time the deals keep getting better and better. This router has the full Duma OS. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Netgear's router interfaces, they have the basic interface, and then you have the Duma OS interface, which is on their super high-end routers. Now this is standard as far as having 4 ports in the back, 4 gigabit ports. Here we go. A USB port there. And 184.79, but check this out. Scroll down. Renewed from 184.79. I thought there were some new and used ones here. Is this one renewed? Is that why? That's the problem. It's already renewed. I got to find the new version. Where's the new one? Oops, it went back too far. I double clicked. Check this out. Let's find the Netgear Nighthawk Pro Gaming 6 stream. Let's just do a quick Amazon search because I want to show you something. This has got me totally excited. And I will make a video specifically on this deal. These all say renewed. Okay, here it is brand new, $258. Okay. Forget the renewed stuff. Look for the returns. Save with used, good condition, $106. Are you kidding me? There are over 75 of these in stock. 75. At least it was when I checked it. You see, when I go to add to cart, and I go over to the cart and look, and sometimes it tells us right in here how many there are. It just says in stock. It did show me there were over 75 of these in stock for $106 with the Duma OS. Now it is still the AX5400 speed, which is exactly what that 82U router that we just looked at that I said was really cool looking. This one's nowhere near as cool to look at. But again, you have the same buttons on the front as we're seeing on all these routers where you can turn the Wi-Fi off, or you can do the WPS. Those are usually what the 2 buttons up front are for. It's a pretty clean design, and you're looking at just over $100. This will absolutely cover most people's homes with very few exceptions, as long as you locate it centrally in the house, as close as you can get it to the middle. And you can throw away any Wi-Fi extenders. You will not need them anymore. I mean, that's a crazy good deal, folks. Absolutely crazy good deal. So I will make a dedicated video on that, but I wanted to make a dedicated video on this ASUS router just to show I'm not intentionally a Netgear fanboy. A lot of them have been Netgear lately. So if we look at back to this ASUS, I'm just stumbling on these. I'm typing ASUS Wi-Fi router, Wi-Fi 6. I don't want anything under Wi-Fi 6. And I'm just scrolling through the search results and I'm looking for new stuff. This is a really neat router. I've already talked about this one at $250. It's a 5700, so slightly better bandwidth than the 5400. It does have a 2.5 gig port. And if we look for returned ones, 189, but, and again, that's that same retailer. These are coming from Amazon Warehouse. Now, I can search Amazon Warehouse for just about anything by clicking on Amazon Warehouse or using this drop down here to select Amazon Warehouse. Then I can type in Wi-Fi router, and this will cover just all Wi-Fi routers regardless. And you'll see right here, $23.70, one used offer. And again, I always want to make sure that the seller is Amazon Warehouse. And obviously, if I'm looking at the Amazon Warehouse tab here, then these are all provided through Amazon Warehouse. Not necessarily these are advertising, I think. But as we continue to scroll down, and that's how I'm finding these deals. I'm just looking. Amazon isn't really doing anything to promote these deals. This is a high-end TP-Link. Despite its awkward looks, it's one of the higher-end versions of TP-Link. That's an AX1800, which is a far cry from the others I've been showing you. That's $69.29, but that should have the USB port on it. And once again, this will cover a much better range than a router that most routers that are over 5 years old. This R6700 is a AC1750, which is a bit older. We've got a TP-Link. We've got the Deco S4, which is what I'm using currently. And that's a mesh system, one left in stock, under $100. That's only Wi-Fi 5. It's not Wi-Fi 6. But they work really, really well. So I can guarantee that's going to cover your whole house. I don't care if your house has brick walls or cement walls. This is going, you put one, separate them out where your signal's having trouble getting through. Put one of these satellites there. Put another satellite, in the basement or upstairs. And then you just have your main one next to your modem. There's not much to do to configure these. You can't select your Wi-Fi channel. They mostly self-configure, and you will absolutely have to set these up with an app on a smartphone. This is a nice router right here, this ASUS Wi-Fi 6 AX3000. That's a super nice router. If you don't want all the flash whiz bang, $88, and there's 7 of them. Yeah, that's a really good deal. Okay, let me go back to the chat and see what you guys are talking about. I've had the chat covered up as I go full screen on these, my little Amazon visits here. All right, let's see what I missed. Mark Gaines says he's using a TP-Link Deco mesh network. Yeah, so am I. Dave264 in the chat says he got away from Comcast. It was expensive junk. Now I'm running Motorola DOCSIS 3.1 cable modem and an ASUS Wi-Fi 6 router. I couldn't be happier, and saving money over time. Yeah, the more time, the more savings, for sure. Michael says, Carrie, I just ordered an ASUS ROG Strix AX3000 for my house. I'm sick and tired of the ISP router from Spectrum, and I'm switching ISPs to get fiber. Nice. Well, which one is that? The ROG Strix AX3000. Let's check that out over. Let me go back one more time to the window capture here. Let's type that in. ROG Strix AX6000. Oh, that's the router that I'm using right now. This one right here that I did a video on not too long ago. So yes, I have 2 different networks here. So on the one network, I've got the mesh, and on the other network, I've got the what I was using, my Netgear Nighthawk. Then I was using the TP-Link. These are just in place for me to evaluate them. I am really, really liking this router. This is a $300 router, but I bought it returned. Do they have any returned ones? Again, I ignore this box. I go to this one down here. Looks like $275. You know what? I wouldn't buy it used at $275. I wouldn't do it. When it's brand new at $299, I'd rather get the full-length warranty when it's new. And I think somebody mentioned that the ASUS, the free security from ASUS, doesn't work on the renewed routers. You have to pay for it. So at $299, there's just not enough savings, in my opinion, for $24. But do watch this area. Keep your eye open. They are sorted by price, and this could change. Look how many they have. Amazon Warehouse, Amazon Warehouse, Amazon Warehouse, Amazon Warehouse, Amazon Warehouse, Amazon Warehouse, Amazon Warehouse. Even that RAX120, remember how I was hooting and hollering about what a great deal it was that was returned for $130? It was $230 new, right? There it is right there, the Netgear RAX120, which is what I've been using at Studio B for the last 2 years. I bought it, it was $400. Now it's $230, brand new. I said, man, they've been used and new for $130. Why haven't you sold them all? Why are there still any left? And if you look down here, Amazon has taken the price down again. So now it's only $114.96. So it's basically $115 coming from Amazon Warehouse. And I think they still have 7 of these in stock. This is a 12-stream Wi-Fi router. Again, it doesn't have all the pretty RGB on it, but it's got the USB port to use as a network attached storage, as I just demonstrated here on this ASUS, except it's plug and play. You don't have to turn security off. Only with ASUS you have to turn that security off. With TP-Link and Netgear, you don't have to do that. Furthermore, it's a more powerful router. We're looking at incredible range, and this has the most powerful processor of all the routers I've tested in the last 2 years. It's a 2.2 gigahertz quad-core CPU in here. Show me another router. Somebody out there, show me another router that has a 2.2 gigahertz processor on it. They're mostly 1.8 or 2.0, even the brand new 6E ones. So this is superior in that way. So I will be putting this one back into play when I'm done testing routers, but it's the one I've been using, and at $114, let's see how many they have left in stock. I'll add it to my cart, and then I'm going to go to the cart, and usually it'll tell me in the cart how many are left. That kind of gets you to, it's like a little psychological motivation to pressure you to buy it. Hurry up before someone else gets it. So this one shows there's 6 left in stock. And this one doesn't tell us, but as I recall, there were over 75 of these in stock. Now, oh, wait a minute, that's the one for $229. Why is that one in there? That's not the one I wanted. Yeah, be careful when you're ordering stuff from Amazon. Make sure you're putting the right thing on the cart. I've been a little too quick on the trigger finger. Okay, that's the one I want right there from Amazon Warehouse. Add to cart. Now let's look at the cart and see how many it says are left. 7. It says there's 7 of these. So that hasn't changed. These, like I said, I think these were 75, I think they said they had used. Now, between these two, which one would I pick? Oh, that's a tough question. Wait for this video to come out while I evaluate this router right here. I will say that's only a 6 stream. This is a 12 stream. That means it'll handle 12 wireless devices simultaneously. And then it starts juggling them after that. This will handle 6. So this one's the better router for less than $10 more. This is the one to get. That's a screaming deal. But if you're just trying to keep it at $100 as close as you can get, this is a really good deal too. They're both solid deals. And again, these aren't advertised. As far as I know, no other content creators are talking about this stuff. They're only mostly talking about what they're getting paid to talk about. I'm just telling you as a friend, I found these deals. I want you to know about them. If you're watching this video after December of 2022, these deals have probably long since passed, but do know that Amazon Warehouse is a thing, and you should always check it if you're looking to save some money on an item, on any item you're buying from Amazon. I wouldn't buy anything with batteries, rechargeable batteries, or any flash drives or storage drives, because we just don't know how much wear might be on them. And the warranty is typically only 90 days, whereas you get the full warranty when you buy something new. So if the difference between a new item and a used item is $10, I'd say buy the new one, or just sit tight, put it on your wish list, and just watch it daily. But yes, the AT82U, very cool router. It's cool looking and it performs well, and it's smaller than these, so it doesn't take up as much space, which is a problem for some people. You know, this one is considered small today. When it came out, when I first bought one of these, it was the largest router I'd ever seen. Now it's nothing. You know, the 6000, the ROG 6000 that I'm using that we just looked at, it's pretty much about the same dimensions, maybe not quite as wide, but just as long. And yeah, they can take up quite a bit of room on a desk or shelf. Let me go back to the chat. Let's see what's happening in there. David Martinez says, Kerry, what do you think about Starlink? Starlink isn't going to work for me for live streaming. It's just too spotty. Eventually it'll get better. They do have a professional level of Starlink, but it's going to cost you $2,500 instead of $500, but it's the same $110 a month. For me personally, I would refer back to how Elon described it as better than nothing internet service. I would take it over, traditional satellite service. It's better than the DSL that's offered here at 1.5. However, the upload streaming bandwidth is fairly limited and a bit spotty, so it's just not going to fit my needs personally. Maybe if I needed something as an emergency backup connection, it's good enough, but that's pretty much the way Elon said it was going to be. It's good enough. But for streaming, I could maybe do 1080 streaming, but I don't know just how consistent my connection would be. LRX in the chat says, will that router allow me to plug in my house phone that's connected to the Comcast router? No, it will not. So people that are getting phone services through their internet service provider are using something called VoIP, or Voice over Internet Protocol, Voice over IP. And you need a special modem for that. It's not a router, it's actually it's a form of a telephony modem. So your phones must plug in to your VoIP's provider modem. There are no routers that I'm aware of, consumer-based routers, that offer a telephone plug-in, because there's many different standards. We talk about, the old Vonage system, if they're still around. The short answer is no. You'd still keep your phones plugged in to your ISP-provided phone modem. So a lot of times they're all one unit. So like Cox Communications out here will have the Wi-Fi router, the cable modem, and the VoIP all in one box. And then your phones plug into that. So you can still replace the router portion by disabling the Wi-Fi in it and then buying a router like this, but it doesn't help with your phones. No. Help me please in the chat room says, I have a 3,000 square foot home with 2 floors and a basement. Which setup should I get, a mesh router or a regular router? For you, I would recommend a mesh router. Now, any of the mesh routers will probably do you just fine, but if you want to have something you can grow into, take a look at the Amazon Eero, take a look at the Netgear Orbi. There's a lot of different versions of the Eero and the Orbi, but look for a tri-band Wi-Fi 6 tri-band mesh router from any manufacturer. Make sure it has 3 units. Some are sold with just 2. Get a 3-unit one. So you basically have your main, and then you have 2 satellites. Put one satellite on the 2nd floor, put the other satellite in the basement. Try and get them as close to the middle of the house as you can, because they broadcast equally 360 degrees. That's not just left and right, that's also up and down. So if you have it off to one side of the house, you may not be able to reach the other side of the house. If that's the case, you'll need to experiment around with where you place the satellites to get you the best signal. But yes, absolutely, I would recommend a mesh system for you, and just be done with it. Now, most mesh systems don't have the USB port. They add, your own network attached storage device, but you could add the mesh network right onto your current router if you wanted to. It starts to complicate things, makes things harder to diagnose when they go wrong. Personally, I would just disable the Wi-Fi radio on your current router. And then the tri-band, the reason I'm recommending tri-band is you have to understand the satellites have to talk to each other. And they're going to do so over your Wi-Fi network, reducing your performance. It's going to slow everything down. So if you have your main 2.4 and your main 5, as you would normally have with a normal modern day router, it'll use that 3rd band for what we call the backhaul, and that is the communication amongst them. So the mesh system that I'm going to put in, hopefully later today, is a TP-Link. So this is what I'm going to upgrade my Deco S4 with right here. Now this is under $200, and let me bring it up to the camera and you can see it a little closer. This literally got delivered today, so I haven't had any time to set it up yet. It'll cover up to 6,500 square feet, so that's more than twice the coverage you need. And you can see the example here, how they've placed these routers. You'll see they try and keep it from afar from the edge of the house, but you can still put it there if it meets your needs, depending on the layout of the house. That house is laid out really strange, but they're super easy to set up. You will use your phone and download the app, and the phone walks you through. The app on the phone will walk you through setting these up. Very, very simple. So I'll be setting that up hopefully tonight. That's the AX3000 Deco X55. That's a big upgrade from the S4. Lately, the S4 has been at 100% CPU usage constantly, and it's just bogging everything down. We've been using it now over a year. So look, if it was working fine, I'd leave it alone, but I'm having some performance issues. I'm not exactly sure the performance issues are coming from the mesh router, but I got to start somewhere, and hey, let's just go ahead and upgrade it to wider range, and that'll improve the strength of the signal anyway. So I don't see any harm in having a stronger signal. Again, let me look back through the chat. If you've asked a question, I haven't answered it, it's because I haven't seen it. So you will have to ask your question again if I haven't answered it. Like I said, I haven't seen it. Craig Lewis says, I have this router. I highly recommend it. I use the open source firmware ASUS WRT Merlin on it. Yes, there are some open source firmware on some Linksys and ASUS and Netgear routers, Tomato, Fresh Tomato. I don't recommend those. They're for advanced enthusiasts. So if you categorize yourself as one of those, then you would enjoy it. If you don't, stay away from it. What is OpenNAT? Is that what Curtis wants to know? Sometimes games have issues connecting to the servers and the port forwarding, and so my understanding is that's what OpenNAT is for. Because I'm not doing any gaming here, it doesn't help me. Feel free to correct me if I'm remembering it wrong. I don't use it. Sarge Tech says, my router setup page looks the same as the RT-AX6000, but just a lot less options. So that's a $25 router Sarge Tech bought, brand new from Amazon. I think they're still available for $25. What was the model on that? Do you remember? Sarge Tech, we can pull that back up. Craig Lewis says, I have a flashing light. Oh, it's a flashing exclamation point at the top of the firmware page when there's a new firmware update. Yeah, ASUS, I think, and Netgear. Or is it just Netgear? When you log in to the router firmware page, if you see like an exclamation point in the top right corner of the administration page for the router, that usually indicates there's a new firmware available. But now most new routers have the option to auto update the firmware, and I would strongly recommend, if you have that option, to turn it on. Then you don't have to worry about doing it manually. Curtis wants to know, do routers from ISPs like Xfinity support this? This isn't an ISP thing. This is a networking thing. So your ISP has a modem, and that modem is what's connecting you to the internet. The router, on the other hand, is a networking device. So if there's a network, then a router works. Period. End of story. Networking is networking no matter how you're using it. So it's not service provider specific. A network is a network. All your service provider is doing is providing the internet to you through something called a modem. Those, you have to get compatible modems that the ISP supports. It's often just easier to rent one, but you can often call your ISP, ask them, if I buy a modem from Amazon or Best Buy or wherever, which ones do you guys recommend? And they might have a big list. So when I called Cox Communications, they said, well, it's a huge list. I said, okay, I'm only interested in Motorola or ARRIS modems, ARRIS. And they said, oh, that makes my job much easier. Here's the one Motorola modem we recommend, it's DOCSIS 3.1. Here's the one ARRIS modem we recommend, DOCSIS 3.1. Then went to Amazon, and I looked at those two models, compared the prices. I think one was white and one was black, and that's the only way they came. I didn't want the white one because everything in my entertainment center at Studio A is black. So I bought the one because of the color scheme. But pricing-wise, they were very similar. Performance was very similar. The number of upstreams was very similar. So when I received the router, when I received the modem, I had to call my ISP, say I want to provision a new modem. And what they do is they disable your old one and they have you read the MAC address or the serial number, or sometimes both. And then they give it permission on their network, and that's it, you're done. You can give the ISP back their modem, especially if you're paying a rental fee. You don't pay the rental fee anymore. Again, if you have ISP issues, connection issues, they might say, hey, that's your modem, your problem, we're not going to help you. But if it is supported, there should be some basic level of help they give you. So again, when you provide your own, you do save money, but then mostly the support's on you. But we can pretty much solve most problems ourselves with Google search, asking here in the chat room. If you have to call out a service technician from the ISP because you can't figure it out, and it turns out the problem is on your side, your modem went bad, or your cable's not all the way plugged in, typically they charge for that. So if they come out and the problem is on their end, they fix it at no charge. At least that's how it works with Cox Communications out here in Phoenix. They do warn you. If we come out there and find out it's something you did, piece of your equipment, we're billing you for it. But if we go out there and find out, the node at the street is overloaded, then that's on us and we fix it because that's what you're paying for. Paul, 1980, says, I picked the right live chat to catch. I've been trying to set this ASUS A5400. It works fine on wired PCs, but I'm trying to sign into the drive on Wi-Fi, and it brings me to the router's sign-in page. So if you've asked this question a while back, so I don't know if you've already resolved it, but you definitely want to browse the network the way I've demonstrated. Because if you go to the other area and you click on the router's picture, then it takes you to the sign-in page. We want to look at the router shares. So you want to go to the left side of your screen where you see network. So if I bring up, for example, let's go back to my screen share here. And I'll show it. I think I want this one. Yeah. So when I'm trying to find a network share, what a lot of people do, they bring up that yellow folder and they go to the computer, or they might go to network right here, and they see the devices down here. These are the devices up here we want to use. This one, I've named the router server. I double click it, I can see the share. But if I click on the device, see right here where it says network infrastructure, this is the section that takes you to like the login page. But the other way that I would do it is just go right here under network, right? So normally that would look, you would see it like this. Click on network, hit that little arrow so it becomes a down arrow. You should see your router here. Hit the down arrow next to the router, and then there's your share. It's that easy to find it. Just navigate in Windows. It's the same in Windows 10 as it is in Windows 11. Hopefully that helped you. Let me go back over to the chat again. Where did I leave off here? Can I pick up the drive via your phone? An old version of ES Explorer has a LAN scan facility. Well, you can use the AI disk to do that if you want to share it over the internet. But again, you're punching a hole in your network when you do it. I'm really only want to do that if it's drastically necessary, because it's just opening another way for me to be vulnerable. I'm not exactly sure what purpose I would have to access from my phone, but you could set up, say, a Plex server. Mitch could talk more about that, because Mitch will listen to his music and watch his shows from his Synology NAS, where he's running the Plex server on the Synology NAS. And then he's listening and watching through his phone, is my understanding, and his laptop too. I don't use it in that way. I don't share media like that, but I guess it would depend on the phone you're using and what types of files you're looking to share. Is it media or is it data? You can certainly create your own cloud. So if you want to like have your your phone pictures, go to your own storage. You could certainly configure that. I'm not quite sure how to do it. I've never done it, but yes, I know it can be done. And I think if you just did a quick search here on YouTube or Google, you'd probably find some demonstrations of it. And of course, it'll vary slightly depending on which router you have. If you're lucky, somebody will be using the same router you have and setting that up. But it should be possible. I'm just not familiar with it. Randolph says, I'm using your router also. What do you think of it? Sarge Tech says, anyone still using WEP as your security is begging for trouble. For sure, WEP can be cracked in seconds by the easiest of I want to say wannabe hackers, but script kiddies, you don't need any special education. It's super easy. You should not be using WPEP. Do not use WEP. You might as well not use security at all. It's that bad. Captain Blinsky's got a TP-Link AC1750 that's 3 years old, and it's working great. It's nice, fast, and secure. Yeah. I'm just saying percentile-wise, for me, which is all totally anecdotal, the people that have had networking problems, most of them that have the problems have TP-Link routers. That could change. It may just be coincidence, or it may be that there's more TP-Link routers out there because they're cheaper. So I'm going to see more bad ones because there's more units. It still may be the same percentage of bad units to units sold. I don't know. It's just an observation. Matthew Burden says he's using an Eero mesh network. Brian Woodley says, my router is an ISP provided one that I've had for years. I'm getting nothing but trouble. I'm telling you, man, do yourself a favor. Buy one of these $100 routers I've demonstrated in today's video and be done with that thing. Be done with it. And if you do, come back here and let us know if you regret doing it. I'd be very curious to hear from real users in real world scenarios who take the advice I offer and come back and tell me honestly, is it something you wish you would have done sooner, or do you wish you never did it? Remember, as long as you're buying it from Amazon Warehouse or Amazon as a new product, you have a very easy and free way to return the product if you change your mind for any reason. Luke Greenia says, that's what I did. I turned the Xfinity Wi-Fi off and I'm using a Netgear Nighthawk router for my Wi-Fi. Yep. That's what I did here in Studio B. I've got the Cox provided router modem and I've disabled the Wi-Fi on it and plugged in any router I want. So I've had the Netgear Nighthawk, but I'm currently using that ROG Strix 6000. It's working really, really well and it's super easy. I always set my SSID and password to be exactly the same. So all my Wi-Fi devices in Studio B just automatically reconnect to it. I don't have to reconfigure anything. I just have to set up the router correctly and it's seamless. Luca Zap in the chat says, I'm using the ASUS Zen Wi-Fi AX88 system. It has perfect performance. So when we look at that particular router, we can pull that up here. Let me share the screen again. The Zen Wi-Fi Pro. Now you'll see as a pair of routers, it's $800. That's on sale, by the way. That's a good price. They're essentially $400 a piece. Now you can buy them as individual units, but they do not have USB ports. So you're not going to run your own little NAS like I've just set up here. And you don't have the 8 gigabit ports like this router has. It's only got 4. As far as routers go, it's pretty basic. You can buy just the one unit here. And you'll see it's $429. We can scroll down to see if there's any used returned ones. Not much of a savings here. If we look at the dual, there's a version, a Wi-Fi 6 and a Wi-Fi 6E. So the Wi-Fi 6 is going to be a little cheaper at $399. And do we have any used ones? $362. It's only a $38 savings. Not excited. There's the pair. $50 less for the Wi-Fi 6 than the 6E. Have any used ones? $749. That's the same price. And then, of course, the big deal here, that's a really good price, $799. You get two of them. They're fully functional routers. You get two of them, which is weird. There's not a satellite. It's two. They just put two of the exact same thing in the box, which is a real lazy way to do it. But do we have any returned ones? Ooh, $665. Wow, it's $135 savings. Oh, but it's not coming from Amazon Warehouse. This one's coming from Amazon Warehouse. It's $735. That's still a pretty good savings of $64. I would definitely consider that. But this router, I did purchase it. I do not like it. I haven't even set it up to run off of it because I have nowhere to plug in my USB drive. So it's useless to me unless I buy a NAS or plug the USB drive in a computer and leave the computer on 24/7 with the share enabled, which I don't want to do. It does say it covers up to 6,000 square feet, but again, I can get 6,500 square feet for 1/4 of this price using the TP-Link system I just showed you. I think this is way overpriced, and I think it's very limited. I'm very disappointed that ASUS at this price point didn't create a satellite for it. You just have to buy a whole nother router if you want to expand this, which is just throwing money at something. It doesn't make any sense. Now, if I go back over to camera 1, you can see I'm not yanking your chain, pulling your leg. This is the router right here. And I am very reluctant to actually put this into service with that lack of USB port. For my needs, it's just not going to meet my needs, regardless of its range. So this one's going back to Amazon. I have until the end of January, though, and I might do a review strictly on this. We'll plug it in and set it up, but I'm very disappointed that it's selling for that kind of money. There's no way that's a $400 router. You can do so much better. It's not a bad router. It's just way overpriced, in my opinion. But if you're happy with it, it's doing what you need it to do. That's wonderful. I appreciate you sharing your story, sharing your experience. That's what matters the most. And everybody's needs are different. So that just simply doesn't meet my needs. I've got to have this USB port, or I'm going to buy a $300 Synology NAS and throw two $300 drives in it, or $350 drives. That's $1,000. Now, granted, I'll get more than 2 terabytes of storage. Actually, I'm using a 5 terabyte drive. But if I went with a Synology NAS, I wouldn't go anything less than 12 gigs. If I'm going to do it, you might as well go as big as you can afford to go, and then get 2 identical drives in a 2-drive Synology, and I'm at $1,000 or a little over $1,000. Or I just plug the little USB drive in. It meets my needs for what I need here at Studio B. I do have a Synology NAS at Studio A, and again, depending on what your needs are. But to spend that kind of money, you drop $800 on a pair of those, then I got to drop $1,000 on a Synology NAS since I can't use this. What choice do I have? I'm in $1,800. Suddenly, this $150 router sounds like a bargain paired with a $60 laptop drive. But you will have to back that laptop drive up yourself, since on a Synology, we would have a RAID array. But then if somebody broke in or somebody virus infected everything, that's still not a backup, right? There's still ways you can still lose your data. Computer Geek in the chat wants to know, will a faster router help with website loading? Well, it depends on the website. If you're going to a website that's on a server that's very busy, then the server is the part that's slow. If you're connecting with a very slow internet connection, like let's say your internet service provider has tiers. They have a low tier, a couple of mid-grade tiers, and a high tier. If you're at the cheapest possible tier, you have a slower internet connection. So you'd have to call your ISP, bump your tier up. But again, if the website you're visiting is just getting hammered, then it doesn't matter if you're in a Ferrari. If you're on the freeway, you cannot go faster than the car in front of you. So if the freeway is got the traffic backed up, you're not going any faster in your Ferrari. You cannot. So if what the website you're trying to connect to, either they don't have a good internet connection to support the amount of bandwidth they need, or they're going through some maintenance you don't know about, that's going to affect the speed there. If you're not paying for much speed from your ISP, then that's your bottleneck. Or if the way you're connecting to your router through Wi-Fi is an older computer with older Wi-Fi prior to Wi-Fi 5, if it's more than 5 or 6 years old, then the connection issue may be there. So the question is every website loading slow? What bandwidth are you getting from your internet service provider? And you can go to speedtest.net and you can check to see if your upload and download speeds are matching what your internet service provider says you are paying for. And that'll be on your bill. Just look on your bill. If you can't find it, call them, call their customer support and ask them, what is the upload and download speed I'm supposed to be getting? And then make sure nobody else is using your network, and run speedtest.net with a wired connection and see if you're getting those speeds. A bad router can also cause slow speeds. So it's entirely possible. There's 6 or 7 different ways your internet could be slow. And the router's one, the modem is one, the speed is one, and the computer you're connecting with and what Wi-Fi adapter, if you're connecting through Wi-Fi, it supports what bandwidth, 802.11a, 802.11b, God, I hope it's not B, AC, AX, and how many signal bars, what strength of signal are you getting from your router, because that will also slow you down. So some questions are a little more difficult to answer. There's a lot of possibilities there. John Banham wants to know, can you change the router password as you said it's a pain? Oh, it's very easy to change your router password. You can change the SSID password. You can change the admin password on any router. It's super easy. It's right typically on your main login page, or it's under the administration tab, and there's just a little box to change the password. So if we want to look at this one, for example, we go back over to the window capture here. Oh, that's not the one I wanted. Where am I? HDMI input, that's the one I want. Okay, and I have to go full screen so I can see it. Yeah, changing the password's very, very simple. Once again, we would log into the router first and foremost. So if I bring up that yellow folder, look under my network devices, where it says network infrastructure, double click, sign in with my admin, and this is my password. And if you look here, it shows us our encryption type and everything here, very quick access to that. As for the router login itself, we can go under, should be under administration, I think. Is it under system? We can back up the settings. What's the exclamation flashing for? Your current Samba allows unauthorized users to log in, but they have to be on my local area network. It's not letting people from outside log in. So that's really nothing to be concerned about. The flashing exclamation point was what we were talking about before. And it took us right to that page. So they really want you to set a password, and I really don't want to. If you're on my local area network, then as far as I'm concerned, you can access that. Anyway, getting back to the original question, changing the login, where is that? I thought it was under administration. We can change the mode of the router to just an access point, or what they're calling a repeater, which is basically an extender, or a bridge, or a mesh. You can turn these into mesh points. If you buy 2 of them, for example, you could put one down in the basement, one upstairs, and put them both into mesh mode. And then you'd follow that procedure. Here they're showing 3 of them working together. They're awfully big though. So just using the mesh network that's the little satellites like I've showed you doesn't take up anywhere near as much room, and they're easier to set up because they're designed to run only as a mesh. So I'm going to just keep that the way it was. Let's see. Password, where do we set up? Network map, internet's information, security level. Where do we change the password? It's really easy. I'm just not familiar. I've been using these Netgear routers so much, I'm more familiar with their firmware. I still think it would be under administration. I don't know why it's not under administration. I would think it would be under system. Yeah, router login name can be changed here, and the router login password, just click the change button. And of course you put in your current password and then put in your new one twice so they match. That's all you have to do. So you can change the login name, you can change the login password. It's exactly where I thought it was going to be. Enable hard drive hibernation. So with Netgear, it enables that automatically. So I definitely want that to be yes. I'm glad I went in here. After 60 seconds, no. After 600 seconds. USB mode. Some items, if you have some old USB devices, they may not work with USB 3. They're supposed to. In such a case, if you're having some difficulty with compatibility, you could drop it to 2.0. Of course, I want to keep that at 3.0. I can change my time zone here to Arizona. Not that that's critical. And hit apply. It's that easy. So I hope that answers your question. Now let me go back over to camera 1. And we'll go back and look for other questions in the chat. I encourage you, if you have questions, do please put them in the chat room. Once again, if I didn't address your question, I did not see it. Is this fiber? No, I don't have fiber here. The internet here is not very good. I wish. Starshine wants to know, if I change my router name and password to the exact same as my neighbor, would all his equipment sign into my router if he lost power? Well, there's two different things you're confusing here in this question, and that is the login credentials to make changes to the router, which is just what I was looking at. What you're referring to is the SSID and password. So yes, if you set your SSID to be the same as your neighbor, and you set your password to your wireless network to be the same as your neighbor, you will log into each other's networks without even realizing you're doing it, depending on which has the strongest signal. So if you're in the backyard, let's say, it's going to switch over. In most cases, it'll just switch you over. If your internet goes down automatically and your neighbor's signal's coming into the house, it'll connect to it. If you're in the backyard and you're closer to the signal there than you are to the one of your own house, it's going to connect to that one. That's the way it should do that automatically with most modern Wi-Fi devices. Dan Nilsson said his router's over 20 years old, but he did buy an ASUS RT-AX88U, and he's going to buy a new ASUS during the holidays. Right on. Yeah, well, treat yourself, man. It's past time. Let's see. Okay, Cordia says, go back to the regular priced router and scroll down for 122. Which router was that, K Cordius? I've looked at several now, and I don't know how long back you mentioned that. How does this router compare to the Netgear I'm recommending? Well, Its main selling point for me is this has the 8 1 gigabit LAN ports in the back. That's not something you find very often in a Wi-Fi router. It's pretty unique. So for me, if I had a lot of devices I was plugging into my router, which I do at Studio A, I don't want to add a switch. I mean, switches are cheap and they're easy to plug in, but it's just messy. It's a lot more cabling. It's one more device to have to reboot or diagnose. So I'd much rather have it in the back of the router. It's just easier. But if I was having issues with, having people in the house using the internet at the same time for broadband applications like watching movies in 4K from Netflix or doing Zoom meetings, I'd probably lean more towards the Netgear because it's a 12-stream router. So it really depends on what your needs are. They're all excellent routers, and it's really, that's a tough call, man. Any of these routers I've shown you are excellent, but they have pros and cons. Some are better than others in certain applications. So it really depends what are your needs and what's your budget. And based on that, you make the choice that's best for you. It's sort of like we go to a restaurant together. Let's say you and I, we go to a restaurant and you ask me which meal is the best one. How hungry are you? How much do you want to spend? And what kind of food do you like? Like, if you're asking me what's my favorite item, I'm going to tell you based on my taste and my value system. So it may have absolutely nothing to do with you. You might absolutely abhor and want to vomit off the menu items. I'm ordering octopus tentacle. No. I've ordered some lobster. Enjoy your bug meat. Jim Gaffigan joke. Listen, they're all excellent routers. It really depends on what is it you're trying to accomplish. What's the most important feature for you? Is it range of coverage? If so, maybe a mesh router's a better choice. Are you trying to cover multiple floors, for example? Are you trying to get internet outside into a building outside? You probably want one of those Wi-Fi bridges that I've talked about into another router on each side. Or maybe a mesh will work there as well. Do you want more network ports and greater range? This bad boy at that price point is a good deal. Do you want something that you can connect multiple high broadband connections wirelessly? Because you got a number of people in the household that are heavy internet users on Wi-Fi. Then that Netgear Nighthawk, that one that's on sale for $113 or $115, definitely great deal. So, do you want to connect a drive to the router to be able to share it like I've demonstrated here? Most of the routers I'm demonstrating, except for the mesh routers, offer that. There are mesh routers that offer it, but they're few and far between. These routers can also be turned into mesh routers if you want to create your own mesh network, but you got to make sure you're ordering the same brand. So ASUS routers that support AiMesh, you can change the models and connect them together. But Netgear Mesh and ASUS Mesh, they're not going to mesh together. So it's best if you just get a mesh network just right out of the gate and you don't have to mess around with all those configurations. I also like you just update the firmware on the main unit and the firmware on the satellites gets updated on these mesh networks. At least from TP-Link, it does them all three at the same time. Sarge Tech says the AX3000 also has a USB on the unit for HD connection. Nice, used at $102.48 from the Amazon warehouse. I mean, anytime you're at that $100 price point, you're really close to it. If you're looking at, 50% off, it's a good deal. For anything they're selling at that price. If you can see the new one is $200 and the returned one is $100 or thereabouts, you're within a few dollars of being half off. That's a heck of a savings. And you'll see, sure, I didn't get the original box. I didn't get any documentation. All I have to do is go to ASUS's website or Netgear's website and pull up the page and I can download the documentation. So what? To save $100, sign me up. Oh, I think I'm way behind in the chat discussion. Let me get caught up and work my way backwards here. Tom Jackson contributes $7.77 via Super Chat. Thank you, Tom. Thanks for supporting the channel. Tom says, hey guys, how's it going? Having fun today, playing with routers, Tom. XRod666 with a $5 contribution says, Carrie, how's it going? I'm excited for the used Netgear router that I just got. I've been using the ISP's router forever, and hopefully there's a difference. Report back and let us know what you think so people don't have to just take my word for it. And I'm assuming, I'm 95% sure you're going to come back and say you wish you did it earlier, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're like, hey, you know what, Carrie? Didn't help me. I'm sending it back. But at least you can send it back when you buy from Amazon with the warehouse. There's peace of mind, no risk. And come back and tell me, one way or the other. Do you regret it, or do you wish you'd done it sooner? Because it'll be one or the other. I can almost guarantee very few of you would ever say, it's pretty much the same. But it depends on how you're using it and what you're replacing. Daryl in the chat says, I've got an ASUS RT-AX88U and I use my ASUS RT-AC3100 as an AiMesh node. That expands my network to my garage about 300 feet away. Awesome. Yeah, that's the way to do it. I'm working my way backwards through the chat now, so going from the most recent and then scrolling up until I start seeing the same comments and questions I saw earlier. So I don't know how far up I've got to go. Michael says, my internet service provider provided a router that has no web GUI or graphical user interface. It's one of the reasons I'm getting rid of it. Yeah, well, for some people that can be important. It's certainly less intimidating and might be easier to navigate with a graphical user interface versus just text. Although it's not typically something people go into and alter very often. Patrick says, Patrick Russo, Carrie, I thought you could not have internet at Studio B and you were sharing your neighbor's Wi-Fi, or has that changed? So the internet that's here is very, very slow. It's about 5 megs up and 10 megs down, which is not adequate for streaming. So then I was using tethering my phone, but it was costing me about $10 every time I went live. Then I tried using another hotspot, and it was sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. And then I asked a neighbor if we could use a mesh system, and the mesh system was a little weak. So then I tried a Wi-Fi bridge, and that has solved all the issues. So yes, with the help of a neighbor, I am able to broadcast to you. Studio B has got all the utilities in the owner's name. They're not in my name, so I can't change them. So while there is internet here, and it's possible for me to get Gigabit, technically I can get it. The ISP does provide it. But because the utilities are not in my name, I cannot make that change, and nor would I if I could, because that means the person receiving the bill is going to get a bigger bill. So it gets a little complicated. That's why Studio B has always been a temporary solution, but we almost had Studio C in Michigan, but through circumstances beyond my control, the deal didn't close. Mostly because the selling agent was a jerk. Lucas in the chat says, I've got a MikroTik RB2011 with 1000 milliwatts Wi-Fi 4 router. I've switched to a TP-Link EX200 because of Wi-Fi 6 performance. Be glad if you test the new AC3 MikroTik Wi-Fi 6. I've never heard of that. MikroTik AC3. Is that at Amazon? MikroTik AC3. Huh. I don't know what that is. Let me share the page with you guys. You'll see what we're talking about. MikroTik AC3. What is that? MikroTik. Who is MikroTik? 802.11a? How old is this? That is one ugly thing. I don't know where you're watching from, but I've never heard of this brand. And their routers are very industrial looking. Very strange. They've got pretty good ratings for the people who buy them. I just don't know what kind of support we would get. Huh. Oh, it's got power over Ethernet on that. Boy, oh boy, this looks old. Yeah, these are all so old. So I wouldn't recommend it for two reasons. One, they're all old. They're out of date. You know, they're still selling 802.11n here, which is ridiculous. Two, they're ugly. They're very industrial looking. And three, I don't know anything about this company. So if I need support, I'm not quite sure what kind of support I'm going to get. I mean, the ratings give me a little faith that it's okay, but that's a little more traditional looking, but no antennas on this. Because it's not a Wi-Fi router. It's LTE support. I wouldn't buy it. I would not buy it. I think when you're connecting to the internet, it's important you're using a trusted device, and it's important you're using a modern device. You know, having this supporting 802.11b. What are we talking about here? It's crazy. Are we buying a 10-year-old router? What's going on? And this one's got no reviews, so that even makes it scarier. Look at this. This looks like it came from 1875. What's going on here? Because I'm not familiar with MikroTik, and because I'm seeing very, very old standards on what's being offered here, I'd avoid them. But remember, I wouldn't recommend anything I wouldn't buy myself or that I wouldn't support for a client. So if I recommend something to one of my customers and they have a problem with it, they're always going to call me to fix it. And sometimes I have to rely on the manufacturer to help me through some problems. So yeah, I cannot recommend these routers for that reason, but I think these might be more European, and maybe if I was in Europe, I'd have a different mindset. But here in the USA, I've never heard of it. But I appreciate the question. Let me go back to the chat room. Are we about 2 hours? It feels like it. Yeah, we're close to 2 hours. So I think we'll go ahead and wrap this up here in the next couple minutes. I try to keep my streams at 2 hours or as close as I can cut it. So we're right at that point. Alex in the chat says we got an ASUS cable modem with a router built in, supports WPA3 Wi-Fi 6. He's getting 985 down and 125 up through his cable company. Nice. Les Stevenson says, hey, thanks, Kerry, for your time. Fantastic information. Catch you next week. Right on. Appreciate you. Andy Kane in the chat says, that router in front of you, does it detect your connection settings from your ISP? Yes, if you're running a cable modem or even a DSL modem, it should just automatically detect the settings. It did that when we did the initial setup. So unless you're logging in with a name and password, everything should happen auto-magically. Yes. Michael Mancini in the chat says he's got the ASUS RT-AX3000. How are you liking it? Jason Scott in the chat says my RT-AX86U ASUS router has a gaming port, and I would like to hook my gaming PC to this port. Do I have to activate the port or no? No, the port is labeled as a gaming port because it's always going to prioritize the data on that port. You can double check, look in the firmware, but the way JJ explained it when he was here, JJ from ASUS, said that you just plug and play. At least if I understood him correctly. So it wouldn't hurt to double check, but you should just plug it into the gaming port, and it's always a gaming port. That's my understanding. Andy Kane wants to know if there's any disadvantages to mesh routers. Well, it depends what you consider to be a disadvantage. They're not as configurable. You're not likely going to be able to change Wi-Fi channels. They're very complex units, and so they want to keep the end user from screwing them up and calling support. So you'll find the interface is much simpler. It'll have the basics of things like port forwarding and stuff like that. But as far as channel selection, not that I'm aware of. I'm not aware of any of the mesh routers that do that unless you're buying a regular router and putting it into mesh mode. But like the TP-Link system that we're using and we're replacing, it automates all of that, and you will always use a smartphone app to set them up. Without a smartphone app, I'm not quite sure how you can set them up. If you don't own a smartphone, that could be a disadvantage. Mostly they're an advantage as far as getting the range you want to get, especially if you have a house with concrete walls, or the house is very large, or you're going to the top floor, a middle floor in a basement. The mesh routers are lifesavers. They'll get signal everywhere you need it. Forbin in the chat wants to know, if I'm doing a new build, would you recommend having a smaller M.2 drive for Windows as a boot drive than having a larger drive for data? No, that's the way we used to do things back in the old days. I don't recommend that anymore unless you have an extraordinarily large amount of data sets for games. So at that point, it gets really expensive. Solid state drives have come down so far in price. I would say you want your game on the SSD as much as possible so that you have faster loading times. So you might have to uninstall a game and then install a different game to maximize the amount of space available to you on a solid state drive. But depending on the needs of the user, if you're somebody that's still data hoarding, again, that's usually older people that do that, or you like to keep a large library of games always installed and available to you, then of course it would make sense financially to just use an old spinner drive, old-fashioned style spinner drive that has the larger capacity. It's really an individual decision, but the idea of keeping the OS away from the data, that comes back from the olden days, and it's pretty much just something older people do. For the most part, you want to back up your data regardless. Separating it out isn't providing you any benefit whatsoever. That's just your imagination. And furthermore, as long as you have a backup, it doesn't matter. When you start partitioning or separating your drives, what you're doing is you're voluntarily creating limits for yourself. And I don't know why somebody would do that. Once again, we had a reason for doing that 20 years ago, 30 years ago, not today. The people that I see doing that today are not younger people. They're older people who learned that because we were doing it for a very good reason back then. Today, it's just like an old habit that won't go away. So the same is true with data hoarding. It's almost the older people that do that. Everything's in the cloud now. So do whatever you feel meets your needs. Don't worry about me. I wouldn't do it. But I've replaced so many mechanical drives. They're just so unreliable. The reliability's gotten better on them, but still, they're slow, they're noisy. I'll use them in a NAS, obviously. Using SSDs, I'm not going to get the capacity I need, and that added speed doesn't benefit me because the network is the bottleneck. But do what's right for you. Don't worry about what's right for me. Carrie, do I have any opinions on the AiProtection service? Is it worth using? That's from DAV264 in the chat. I don't use it myself. I would suggest you try it and see if you like it. Once again, it's like asking me if hey, those chicken wings that you're eating, are those hot and spicy? And I'm like, yeah, no, these are mild. and then you bite into it and it's burning your lips off? I thought you said these weren't hot and spicy. Hey, they're not hot and spicy to me. Or one of my favorite ones. This guy says, hey lady, does your dog bite? And she says no. So he goes to pet the dog and the dog bites him. He goes, I thought you said your dog didn't bite. And she says, that's not my dog. So be careful of the questions of opinions that you're getting from strangers online, because their needs and their expectations are uniquely theirs. Your needs and your expectations and your budget, that's all uniquely yours. The best thing you can do is try it, see if you like it, decide for yourself. And when you do, instead of asking me, come back and tell me, hey, I tried this. This is what I liked or this is what I didn't like. And share your experience. So anytime I say anything, there's a certain portion of the audience that thinks I'm a shill, or they think my opinion's been bought. So no matter what I say, there's a certain amount of people that just aren't going to believe me. When it comes from the viewers, it's more widely accepted. There aren't as many naysayers or skeptics when they feel like it's coming from another viewer. And I'm very genuinely interested in your reaction to it as well. So please let me know if you use it, what you thought of it, and why. All right, let me just scroll down one more time and make sure I haven't missed anything here. Ron Barnish wants to know, will there be a video on 12/23? Yeah, it's Friday. I broadcast every single Friday. The 23rd is a Friday, so yes, as there will be on the 30th, as there will be, yes, there will be we'll be live this Friday, the 23rd, as normal. Stu in the chat says, I find myself having to reboot my router and modem in order to get better bandwidth. Do you see the same issue with mesh equipment? I see that issue with old equipment. Something's wrong. Likely you need a new router in most cases. That will typically resolve that issue, or it's your modem that's failing. I would change the router first, and if the problem continues, I would change the modem. That's it. It's just that simple. That's not a normal behavior. It's never acceptable, and something's wrong with what you have. Where is Mitch? I don't know. Mitch doesn't check in with me, but Mitch will be here on New Year's Eve. In the daytime, we'll have a little hangout. We're not going to do any work. We're just going to hang out on New Year's Eve, and hopefully you'll join us. Ray says, Carrie, how's your day going? It's going great. I hope your day is going well too. Thank you for asking. Sarge Tech says, one thing about old houses back in the early 1900s and 1800s, they didn't have the invention of drywall yet, so they had the lathe and plaster. He says rooms are wooden slats and metal lash, then plaster over. Rooms were like Faraday cages, bad for Wi-Fi signal. This is true, but a mesh router will get you through that. Absolutely. And these newer routers have something called beamforming. And the more you use them, the smarter they get and can improve your signal strength even through beamforming. But it depends on just how much distance and exactly what the materials are and how old is the router you're using now. The old Wi-Fi routers don't have anywhere near the power, range, and sophistication and performance of the newer ones. And of course, a mesh router is going to get through it regardless. Tom Jackson provided a Wikipedia link to MikroTik. Let's check that out before we go. MikroTik, what does it say about it? It's a Latvian network equipment manufacturer. Well, that's what I suspected, right? It's European. So, okay. That's why we haven't heard of it over here. So because it's not over here, I would be worried about support. That's my main concern. So appreciate that link. It's pretty much what I expected it to be. So I would stick with ASUS, Netgear, or TP-Link. Those are the only ones I support for my customers. One customer does have a Ubiquiti. They have a Dream Machine. I reluctantly support that. Starshine wants to know what's my broadcast schedule over Christmas. All I can tell you right now is, because I'm working multiple jobs, right? When my computer repair job, when I get support calls and I have to do work, that takes priority over my YouTube videos. I'm making as many YouTube videos as my time schedule permits. Lately, like this Saturday, last Saturday I was available. That doesn't happen very often. Sometimes things get super busy this time of year, usually. And then from December 26th to January 2nd, things are either really super busy or really super slow. Last year it was slow. So depending on that, I'll broadcast as time permits. But you can always count on me being live every Friday at 12 noon Pacific time, which is 1 p.m. Arizona time, which is 3 p.m. Eastern time. I always do that every single Friday. You can count on that. If there's a major holiday that falls on a Friday, I will let you know if that will impact the broadcast schedule. But I'm trying to make that my broadcast schedule no matter what. And I've been sticking true to that for at least 2 years, if not 3 years. So as for what's going to happen this next week, I will broadcast as time permits. I'm going to try and set aside Mondays for members-only videos. These will be videos and hangout sessions for members, not subscribers, not moderators, but members, the folks who are paying $9.99 a month. We have a smaller, much smaller little video where there's like 13, 15 people watching, and we can interact with each other and just hang out. And those videos will be always just members only. You guys that are not members won't even see the videos. You won't even know. And that's a way for me to show my appreciation to the supporting members who are helping me to be able to buy equipment to make the content. And I want to make sure that they have my ear and that they're not competing in a chat room that's often very chaotic. It moves very quickly and they get overlooked. They say, hey, I'm paying you money and you overlooked me. Hey, look, man, I do the best I can trying to do all the things I'm doing when I'm live. So that's why having a members only video, and to do that like on Mondays at 1 o'clock, that's my current thought process. And then the members have that added incentive for becoming a member. So they get my attention. Also, members can always reach out to me in email. Do identify yourself as a member because I need to verify it. And then I will help you in any way that I can, as I would any paying customer in my real business. And look, as far as everybody else not members, I appreciate all of you. I'm glad you're hopefully a part of the community and interact in the live chats. And I don't want to alienate anybody. So I'm doing my best to find that balance. And just if I can dedicate Mondays and dedicate Fridays, I hope to be able to dedicate Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, but YouTube money has gone down the toilet. It was bad before. It's worse now. I mean, it's terrible. The memberships are what's keeping this channel alive right now. It's either that or I start knocking on doors to bring in more sponsorships, which, like when I do this video on this, they send me the unit, but they don't pay me. So, okay, now I've got a unit here, but I don't necessarily need it. But it's great for content. And it's wonderful to make the introduction for the product to the audience, because that's one of the biggest problems manufacturers have, is just getting customers to know they exist, right? Then the customer can decide if it's too expensive or it doesn't meet their needs. But most of the products I'm showing, I hope are new for most viewers, that you guys didn't know anything about these products or didn't know that, you can find these deals at Amazon Warehouse. Amazon's not paying me for that. I tried making an Amazon video, live video, showing that, and Amazon cut me off. they said I violated their terms. So I'm very reluctant to make any more Amazon Live videos, but I will make pre-recorded like product reviews that get attached to the product page. And if somebody then watches my video before they purchase that product, then I make a commission. I also have my links in the video notes. I want to remind you of the couple of sponsors, the handful of sponsors I have. This time of year where we get the good deals. So RoboForm is 60% off for new customers only. Acronis, 40% off for everyone. And that RoboForm deal and the Acronis deal are valid until the end of 2022. Don't forget about Instant House Call. If you're somebody that's providing help and support to family or friends, Instant House Call is a remote software designed for technicians. So it's got tools that make it easy for the end user to put the attended remote access on and to have it removed when you're done, or to configure it as unattended. And it has tools designed for diagnosing and repairing computers remotely. It's a bargain price. You can get free trials to everything. Acronis has free trials. RoboForm has free trials. Acronis has free trials. Check them out. Don't take my word for anything. Go check it out and decide for yourself with peace of mind. You're not going to get a virus from it. The software is safe. The software is easy to uninstall if you don't like it. And you got a heck of a deal when buying RoboForm at 60% off using the link in the video notes below. Acronis 40% off using the coupon code Kerry Holzman 2022. And of course, we always have the Windows and Office product keys from VIP CDK deals. There's always a discount by using the product code of Kerry. I think it's just Kerry, isn't it? And all the links for everything are in the video notes. Everything is peace of mind and guaranteed, or I won't promote it. And again, I don't want to just sit here and make commercials for people. I'm genuinely interested in the products I'm showing you. I'm not paid to do this. I wasn't paid to do that. I'm not paid for the vast majority of content. Acronis and RoboForm, the more people buy it, the more money I make. The Amazon links, I can't see anything you're buying using my links. Or let me rephrase, I can't see who's doing the buying. I can only see what's been purchased, so I know how much commission I am owed. But I have no idea who purchased it. So that's a great way to support the channel anonymously. It doesn't change anything for you as far as price or shipping. It's all the same. So I appreciate the love back at you, and appreciate everybody hanging out and all the participation in the chat room today. Contribution from XRod666 of $1. And Starsign said, I did all my Christmas shopping early and I posted all the presents beginning of December. Now I just hide in the shadows in the stores and watch and wait for Boxing Day. Yeah, the December 26th, the day when everybody boxes everything back up to take it and return it. That's a British and Canadian word that our Americans may not be familiar with. Thank you again for the support, XRod666, Tom Jackson, Sam Van Thiel for becoming a new member. Thank you for becoming a new member. And looks like the new member logo isn't working, so I might have to fix that. Thanks for watching, and I will see you all very, very soon. Until next time, bye for now.